This is meant to be a video on the 5 key considerations for incorporating cardiovascular work into your strength training plan so that you don't lose all of your muscle and strength and gains. But I've just checked my notes and I've actually written down 6 things. So I lied to you in the video, it was clickbait. You're gonna have to hang around for a 6th one. Let's jump in. On my Instagram, I did a bit of a tongue-in-cheek video about things that you should do if you want cardio to see your gains. It wasn't particularly helpful. I was just being a sarcastic prick. So let's get into some actually helpful stuff. I've got some in-depth notes down here. I've got my heart rate monitor on. We're currently just clocking in at around 128 beats per minute. I imagine that's gonna get up a little bit more. I apologize for the heavy breathing you're about to experience. And no, I won't edit it out. The first thing that is key is start small and build up. It's very easy to get your hands on big plans for marathons and stuff like that and find that you're running 10Ks in the first couple of weeks. My advice, and this goes the other way as well if you're reintroducing strength training, but that's a whole nother topic, is start small and build up. Start with less than you think you need and gradually ramp up. Because you're not going to need a huge amount to start with as far as a stimulus in order to adapt. You'll be surprised what a few intervals or one really slow jog will do for your fitness to begin with. But also, it's going to mean that it's not a huge impact on your diary. One of the mistakes people make is they start training in the gym 4 times a week. And then they introduce cardio, so they do strength training twice a week and cardio twice a week. And then they wonder why their strength goes down. Well, they start losing muscle. Start small in a way that doesn't interfere with your strength training, whether that's 5 minutes of interval work at the end of every weights training session or a 30-minute jog on the weekend. And then very, very, very gradually build up. That is even more important when it comes to running because of the nature of the impacts that you will be going through. The second tip, eat a little bit more. Not loads more. You don't need to carbo load kilos of pasta before every single run. But if you are doing the same exercise you're normally doing, and then you add more exercise on top, your energy demands are going to increase because of that. So there's 2 reasons why you want to increase what you're eating a little bit, mostly from carbohydrates would be my recommendation. Number 1, to make sure that you recover. One of the reasons why people feel like they lose muscle and strength when they start incorporating cardiovascular work is because they are under-recovered from their runs, if you're jogging, let's say, and they go into the gym tired. Something that will help give you energy is obviously eating enough food. So make sure you are incorporating more carbohydrates, probably before or after your training sessions. That applies both for your strength training and your cardio work, running, swimming, cycling, whatever it is. Don't be afraid to eat a little bit more. No, that is not me saying that you need to go and pound tubs of Ben & Jerry's every other day, but if you're having rice, pasta, bread, whatever it is, just increase your portion sizes ever so slightly, especially if your cardiovascular exercise and or your strength training starts suffering. If you're going to be taking this hybrid approach of trying to get bigger and stronger and fitter, then you need to treat yourself like an athlete and eat accordingly. So bump up those carbs. Third thing, prioritize your priorities. Very vague and not very helpful. What I mean by that is you will have priorities within your training program that are the most important part of your week. Let's say, for instance, you're trying to develop your lower body strength. One of your main priorities is probably going to be a squatting exercise and a deadlifting exercise. What those exercises are doesn't matter for this example. So one thing you want to make sure you are doing is not interfering with that with your cardio work. So, for instance, that might mean if you like to go into the gym on a Wednesday and squat heavy and deadlift heavy, don't add cardio on Tuesday if it's going to tire you out. Don't go for a long run on Tuesday if it then impacts your squats and your deadlifts on Wednesday. That's not sensible. Similarly, if the squats and deadlifts are the most important part of your week, don't do anything before them that's going to tire them out. Yes, you can go for a 5K run on the treadmill as a warm-up and then hit legs, but if your squats and deadlifts suffer, that is a bad trade. So be really, really meticulous with what's important in your program. If you're going through a specialization phase, if you're going through a phase where you're trying to PB a certain exercise, if you're trying to build a certain muscle group, make sure you're not doing anything that's going to take away from that because it will rob you of your gains. The 4th thing, track your weights. Don't have to track your warm-up weights, but you're working weights you probably should, because a very good indication that you're doing too much cardiovascular work or you're not recovering from it and it's impacting your strength training is that you just start lifting less weights. You either have to lift lighter weights for the same reps or you lift fewer repetitions with the same weight. I think those are the two options really. I'm trying to wrap my head around it. Math's not my strong point clearly. So track your weights because it will give you a good indication. You are not going to notice anything visually, but if for a couple of weeks you look at your logbook, your training plan, your diary, and you see a trend of all of your big lifts starting to go down when you do more cardiovascular work, that's probably a good indicator that you're either overdoing the cardio, you're under fueling yourself and under recovering, or you need to change your training plan up from your strength work, move things around, whatever it is, adjust volume, intensity, because performance is starting to drop. It's not unusual over the first week or two for that to happen a little bit, and it's not unusual to go in after a shit night's sleep and find that some of your exercises have suffered. But if it's a trend and it's fairly consistently going down in the wrong way, obviously, then make sure that you change things up. You're not going to know that if you're not tracking things. If you're not paying attention to what you're lifting and you're like, oh, that was heavy today, you won't realize before it's too late and you've started losing those gains anyway. Number 5, I think, focus on intensity in the gym. So what I mean by that is the proximity to your 1 rep max with which you're lifting, the proximity to failure you're getting to in a set. So as you start to increase your cardiovascular work, you're going to have to decrease the amount of volume of strength training you do because of time, obviously. So if you do an hour less strength training across the week, let's say, you can still maintain, if not progress in a lot of areas, so long as you keep the intensity high. The way to think about this is if you imagine a lot of the low-level circuit boot camp classes you might see at leisure centres, the people who do those classes will do hundreds of reps, but they'll do them with like a 5 kilo bar or 2 kilo dumbbells. And so the volume is high, the sets, the reps, the total load they're lifting, like they are active for an hour. But those classes never build any muscle because you're never taking any sets close to failure. You're not lifting anything heavy enough to elicit that stimulus and that response to get stronger. So you want to make sure if you're doing less work in the gym, that's overall volume coming down. So instead of doing 3 sets of bicep curls, you do 2 sets, but you make sure those 2 sets are really, really tough. You train them really well, you take them to failure, you don't swing and cheat the repetitions, you train for a big range of movement, but you make sure the intensity doesn't suffer. It ties back with prioritizing your priorities because you're going to need to make sure you've got the energy to train them hard. But so long as you are taking exercises close to or to failure on a regular basis and you're eating enough, it's unlikely, not impossible, but unlikely that you're going to be losing any appreciable muscle mass. And finally, number 6, cycle your goals. Again, ties back in with prioritizing your priorities. Don't spend too long focusing on one thing. So what I mean by that is it's not unusual to see all of these different training modalities as a dial. We've crept up to 136 beats per minute. It's starting to get sweaty in here. That was weird. Can't edit it out. We're doing this all in one take, Aaron. This is bad. You're talking to yourself in the third person. Cycling your goals. Sorry for that strange interlude. What I mean by this is go through phases. If you are training towards a certain goal, then push the training that way ever so slightly. If you're trying to improve your running significantly, you're training for a half marathon, then your running volume is going to obviously increase. The time you spend at the gym, your volume is going to decrease. So take that strength training dial, turn it down a little bit. Take the cardiovascular running dial and turn it up. But don't keep it like that. After 8, 10, 12 weeks, change that dial a little bit. Shift back and put a bit more emphasis onto the strength training side of things. Maybe it's a specific body part. Maybe during your running, you dropped a lot of the bodybuilding style lower body workouts because it was just fatiguing your legs too much. So hold on to your muscle mass by doing heavy strength work. And then when you're getting closer towards your goal, after you've done 8, 10, 12 weeks, more focused on running, take that dial, turn it back down a little bit, get hold of that lower body dial and turn it all the way back up again. You won't have lost any muscle mass, But you also don't want to spend too long at that kind of maintenance dose, because eventually you may well. This will give you a nice novel break, because all of a sudden you won't be running 20, 30 kilometers a week. You'll be running 10 or 15. So it'll free your mind up a little bit, be a nice change of pace. You'll give your body a chance to adapt to a different stimulus, and then you'll come back to the running stronger for it anyway. So don't feel like everything has to be balanced at all times. We always want you to be doing something every single week when it comes to getting stronger, building muscle, improving your fitness. But it's not going to be possible, no matter who you are, to be hitting that with equal levels of intensity. Even within your conditioning, you may find that for a while you have to favor the low intensity stuff, the stuff I'm doing now, just moving continuously, keeping a moderate heart rate, keeping a pace that you can just about maintain a bit of an awkward, sweaty conversation at. And then your intense work is your strength stuff. You might not have the energy, the effort, or the willpower to do a whole bunch of tough intervals. But then you might go through a period where you're really pushing the interval stuff. So in my mind, a year or two ago, I was working up to a 2K on the row. I just wanted to hit a certain score. And so I had some really intense workouts. I would do 2 interval workouts a week on the row machine. And it took me about 40 minutes by the time I warmed up, did my intervals to do that. And I didn't have a ton of time to do any low intensity work because I was also doing other strength training. And so that was fine. I didn't do any low intensity work for that time, or I barely did any other than my warm-ups. I also had less time and less energy to do a whole bunch of upper body work, like my upper back, my grip, my bicep, my forearm muscles were really fatigued from the rowing, obviously. So I tapered down that a little bit. I still did some, but I did less. Then once I hit my goal on the 2K rower, I got hold of that training dial, which I turned down to 2 or 3, and turned it back up to 10. So have phases throughout the year, the seasons, whatever, where you're leaning one way more than another, but then always come back to it. This will keep things fresh, it will keep things novel, it will keep things interesting, but also make sense from a training perspective. So just go over them very quickly. I've got the list here. Number 1, start small and build up. You don't need to jump in the deep end right now. Number 2, eat more. You're an athlete. Fuel yourself like one, or at least pretend you're an athlete. Number 3, prioritize your priorities. Simple, I think. Number 4, track your weights. Don't guess. Don't just assume you're lifting enough. Track them. Watch the trends. Number 5, intensity is king in the gym. Don't matter how much volume you do, get close to your 1 rep max. Get close to muscular failure or to muscular failure. Your muscles will thank you. And number 6, cycle through your goals. Different phases during the year, different goals, different volumes. Don't cut anything out. Just taper it back slightly. If you're watching this and you found this useful, if you like my content, I do appreciate you leaving a like. Let me know in the comments. If there's anything you want me to talk about next, any questions, fire them across in the comment section or on my Instagram. I guess I'll see you in the next one. Hopefully I've pressed record on the record button.